Welcome back to the Mindful Method podcast. I'm your host, Coach Mike. I've got a super exciting guest today, Heather Claus, a personal trainer and online coach here based in Toronto, working with women over 40. I talk a lot about men on my podcast, and I thought it was time to bring an expert on who works with exclusively women. And happy to have you here today, Heather. Thanks for joining me.
Mike, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited about this. This is something new for me, so this is great.
And Heather, I want to dig in a little bit about your story. Like, I'm curious, and for the audience, like how did you get into it all? How did you get your taste of fitness?
If we really want to go back, believe it or not, my influence was Arnold Schwarzenegger. I know that sounds crazy, but I was born in the early 70s, and obviously Arnold was a big action guy in the 80s, and I have an older brother, 4 years older, and he used to force me to watch these movies. Mm-hmm. And as a kid, you know what it was? It was Conan.
Conan, okay, yeah.
And I saw Conan, and I don't even remember how old I was. And you're just like, oh my God, like this is a human. And so I was always athletic as a kid. Like I did a lot of sports, did a lot of water sports, skied in the wintertime. And it was always, I was just sort of brought up that way. And I really enjoyed sports and doing athletic things. And so my stream in high school was very much sort of a cross between science and phys ed at the time. They didn't call it kinesiology, and art. So I was really sort of this middle ground, and I was going back and forth. And the dream was kind of to go into sports med, really. That was sort of the dream. I didn't do that. The push was for me to do art, which is what I did for a while. I was sort of in that world, and I did a career change, believe it or not, in my early 30s. And just started taking courses. I took the YMCA personal training course because I thought it was quite a bit more substantial information, longer term. I think it takes about 6 months or so, at least it did at that time. This would have been in 2002, I believe. And so there was like a lot of in-classroom practical time and stuff. And at the time, I think CanFit was sort of in Canada anyway, was a lot shorter. It was a weekend course, and then you did a practical. So I sort of looked at it and I thought longer education, more classroom time, more learning in that space is probably better. So that's how I started my journey. And then from there, I worked in Cairo just as a chiropractic health assistant, but there's sort of these multifaceted layers of training, rehab. And then I became a fully certified Pilates instructor for a while.
So you've got quite the background. So it sounds like you've got a little bit of rehab, maybe recovery. You've got the personal training side of it. And I imagine you've worked with a wide range of demographic of different people too in the beginning. I
have. At the beginning, I would say it was a lot of really broken people, like people with a lot of structural issues and stuff. And as much as I really enjoyed that, I sort of got to a point and a taste of, I would say, the mind of Charles Poliquin. And a lot of personal trainers might not know who he is, but in the strength and conditioning world, he is like, he's a legend. And it was my husband at the time, who was an ex-professional athlete. He played professional football, and he was the one that exposed me to Charles Poliquin. And I started reading some of the T-Nation stories, like the articles and everything that he wrote. And that influence with, I think the first time I was really exposed to it was something called biosignature. So biosignature is a 12-point body fat caliper testing. And then based on that information, determines sort of how your body stores fat. And then there is nutrition and supplementation to try and help reduce, we'll call it spot fat reducing, even though I know a lot of people think that that's not possible. But that was his method, a tried and true method that Charles had done on athletes like years and years and years and years and years and years and years. So that was sort of my first real dive into his work. And then I really did like a hard stop on what I was doing. And I'm like, I want to be a strength coach.
And tell us more about the strength coach. Tell us, yeah, your view on strength and maybe who your typical client is you're working with and how you talk about and incorporate strength into their lifestyle. What does
Yeah.
that look like?
Well, I think a lot of training, and I want to talk a little bit differently about, so when I talk about training, I'm talking about
Mhm.
periodized training, meaning there is a plan, you're filling in your numbers for your sets and your reps and your weights. There is progressive overload, so not just the overload part, but
Mhm.
progressive, meaning like your exercises are progressing, as time goes on for an extended period of time.
Mhm.
um, so I think really that's how things changed. I think when I was a personal trainer, I would sort of loosely have a program and see how the person feels today. And I'm not saying that I don't ask those questions,
Mhm.
but I'm still very much, I try my best to sort of stick to the plan. Um, when like I said, I was exposed to more of the strength and conditioning world and started taking courses through Charles Poliquin, and really I dove into some internships with some of his top people, and that was the biggest like learning ever, more than a course honestly could ever do. Is I call it throwing yourself in the trenches
Mhm.
with people who are way smarter than you, and getting yourself really uncomfortable. And that's how I learned best anyway.
And so give us an example of like, were you in a scenario with an athlete trying to improve performance? Like how did you really take your learning to the next level?
Yeah. So what I did is I worked for Good Life for quite a while. I started off as a fitness manager. And while I was doing that, it put me in a position to, be able to start to afford to take some of these courses. Because if you know anything about a lot of the courses with Charles, at least back then, and this would have been, mid to late 2009, 2008, they were very expensive. And I was a new mom, and it just something that didn't seem possible for me. So I got into management, where I could, as we call it, learn more to earn more, right? That was sort of the idea. And I made sure that I was planning my way kind of out of that company to be with other Poliquin coaches that had more experience, knew a lot more than I did, and go in and just kind of absorb.
Mhm.
And so I was lucky enough to get hired at a place that's still going called Reach Personal Training. And it was known as a Poliquin gym, all Poliquin coaches working there. Charles, whenever he came to Toronto, he would train at our gym and come and visit. And that was kind of the big, okay, I'm not the know-it-all here. I know nothing,
Mhm. Mhm.
And that's what I did. And I worked there for 8.5 years.
Awesome. And
Yeah,
maybe let's talk about some of the typical women you're working with. Who does that person look like? What are their common maybe pain points or challenges they're working
sure.
through?
Yeah.
What does that look like? Yeah.
So right now, yeah, I'm pretty much exclusively with women. I still have a few male clients, but mostly my focus is on women. Um, a lot of the times, it'll be someone who is new to the gym, and usually the focus for all of them really is to feel better in their skin, um, feel better from a health perspective, and get stronger. I don't really talk about fat loss that much, because that is a byproduct of getting healthy and lifting
Hmm.
weight.
Hmm.
I think as women, and I'm sure it's being screamed right now on social media. There's pros and cons to this, but we are our own worst enemy, in the sense that we're very hard on ourselves. The media is hard on us. Marketing is tough on us. We're tough on each other. The expectation is this, and there's not a ton of support. So someone who comes to me what I really try to focus on is like, let's get you really feeling better, like foundationally feeling better and getting you strong. Because when we start getting that confidence level, then things move forward from there.
And let's hear a little bit more about your process of, like, let's say I'm a new mom in my
Sure.
40s, and
Yep.
I want to just start feeling better. And how are you helping me rebuild my foundation? What, maybe walk me through a little bit what that looks like.
Yeah. So I always do an assessment with everybody. So that would be intake forms. So we get that, we'll check out my metabolic health. That might mean some functional screening that I do in regards to movement. I need to document
Hmm.
any injuries that they've had. And then we'll go into, any supplements they're taking, any medications that they're on, that sort of thing. What can they commit to, right? 3 times a week, 4 times a week, 2 times a week. I won't
Hmm.
take anyone less than 2 times a week. And then I do ask them what their commitment level is. So is the commitment level a 10 out of 10, or is it a 6 out of 10? Is it a 4 out of 10? So there's a lot of mindset work that goes, you're smiling because I'm assuming this is very
Yeah.
similar.
So
There's a mindset thing.
if I were to give you a 6, how would you coach me?
Yeah. So I would ask you, why are you giving yourself a 6? What does that 6 mean?
Hmm.
Why is it not a 10? What would it take for you to be a 10? And then it would just be sort of an open conversation, because most of the people that you have coming to you, they're not giving you the 10 out of 10. It's rare. It's rare. If
Hmm.
your general population, like, it's rare that you're getting someone that's a 10 out of 10. They're usually maybe hovering around the 6 to 7. You might get some 8 sort of thing.
Hmm.
And then it's like, if they're there and they're, the money does come on the table, so they're committed, then it's your job as the coach to work with them, because it's a
Hmm.
team effort, to get them to that 10. And that just takes time and exposure, I would say.
Hmm. And I'm curious. So I've heard this a lot. I work with some women as well. Of maybe their background is the classes, the F45s, the Orange Theories, and
Yeah.
never knocking on these, but for those, and I know women especially love the social, the community there. And so if I were coming in, I'm doing F45 maybe 4 or 5 days a week. How would you coach me to really build that foundation? You've talked around strength. What would that look like, of maybe shifting perspective a little bit?
Yeah, that usually shows up in the assessment, to be honest with you, because I do a bunch of different screening, and um, I'll go over that with them. Okay, so, this particular thing, your CLAT test is showing that you have hamstring weakness and your adductors are weak, and going through all of this, and how doing things like F45, hey, it's great. You're being committed. You've got the community in the class and stuff, but you're probably not putting on a lot of muscle, and you're not getting any stronger. So thankfully, I haven't had to come across that yet for a lot of sort of Group X people, because sometimes the Group X people are not really interested in the one-on-one coaching, you know?
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
so I could see that would be hard to pull them away from that, because it is a community based. Had I had someone like that, I wouldn't necessarily say, hey, stop that, unless that kind of exercise regime was causing some health issues with them, like the burnout and the fatigue and
Hmm.
joint problems and stuff like that.
And I'm curious, with both your in-person and online coaching, this is something I've newly incorporating, is getting blood work done with clients ahead of time, so we have some baseline of where hormones are at, what their markers are like, and what we can really kind of craft the game plan towards. Is this something you're doing with your clients as well?
Yes, it is. So the online stuff, I am, like I said, currently working with a company, and they are doing all of that. For my own personal one-on-one coaches that I have, or clients that I have, I've just sort of partnered with Nia Health. I don't know if you've heard of them. They're
I've
here
heard of
in
Nia.
in
Yeah. Yeah.
Canada. Yeah. So I have them go to Nia, and they are the nurse practitioners and doctors. The great thing about Nia is, I had a conversation with the owner, Samir, quite a while ago when they first came out. And I said, now, when you're looking at your values for people, are you looking at optimal or are you looking at okay, just average, which is sort of what we're getting from our own healthcare providers right now. And they said, no, we're coaching on optimal. And I said, wonderful. I'll push people to get the blood work with you and you can do the coaching. And the interesting thing is, I have a client recently who just did it, and the language that I'm using just from seeing us training together and some of the things I've been able to is the same language that's coming from the practitioners with Nia Health. So I think that's great. And I love if the training industry and the health or medical industry can really come together to support the patient just to be healthier and live better, you know?
Yeah, I feel like there's a big gap here, especially in Canada. We're missing that synchronicity of medical and fitness kind of work together. I don't know if you've seen it with some of your clients, but I've had doctors come work with me because they're not doing what they say they're going to do with their own patients, which is wild to think that. And it's clear, like I know this is big in the US where they are matching blood work and fitness practitioners or coaches together because it's, the population is so obese and so overweight and needs so much help on the health front that it's clear it's kind of time that the two come together. Maybe tell us a little bit more about the online space and what that looks like and how you're working with clients.
Yeah, so it's new. So I've just sort of started with them. So I'm currently sort of going through their training and stuff. But I have to say I'm really, really impressed with the company. It's so thorough. The questionnaires that they have these women fill out. It's metabolic health. We're looking at, it's not just a nutrition thing, which is a part of it. They're looking at micronutrient levels. They're looking at, lifestyle factors. It's very, very extensive. And then sort of based on all of that information it's like mapping out a plan of, we'll call it a plan of attack to try and help. Because a lot of these women come on and they're like, I want fat loss. I want fat loss. I want fat loss. And they've been dieting for years. And most of them are not eating enough, believe it or not. And most of them are highly stressed. They're not sleeping well. They're not getting to the gym at all. They're looking after their families, or they're high functioning executives. So maybe they've got a company and maybe they've got elderly parents that they're like, it's these layers and layers of stress and not looking after themselves. And they're like, okay, I'm ready to do fat loss. And you're like, no, we need to get you to a baseline first before we can even move in that direction. And that's we'll call it a tough sell, because a lot of people, like, I'll use the word desperate, and I understand where that comes from, to feel better, because they're like, I put on all this weight and I'm barely eating anything, and it's like, well, that's why you've put on all this weight, is the stress and, poor nutrition over an extended period of time. So there is the coaching with that and working with them one-on-one, check-in calls. It would probably be something similar to what you do with maybe your male clients that you work on online as well. There's got to be your check-ins and some accountability stuff, and then going from there. So it's for me, it's exciting too, because and we can talk about this a little bit, because I was in more of a sports, yes, general population, but where I was working was a lot of athletes and stuff. And it was, me, the woman in her 40s with all dudes. Like, there was times where I would be like, okay, I need to just leave the room for a second, because the conversation is hurting my brain,
Yeah. And which sport was that in particular you were working with?
Oh, so I've worked with football, basketball, skiing. I'm trying to think, what else have I worked with? I think those are the main ones. At the gym, though, they have jiu-jitsu, shot put, rugby, lots of racket sports.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So you've had quite a vast kind of variety of different athletes you worked with, it sounds like.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I have. Yeah. And it's, you know what, I think I would say up until now, probably one of my favorite things to do. And had I gotten into this a lot younger, because, I got into it a little bit later in life, I would have really loved to work with sort of high school athletes to develop them into, whether it be, NCAA or, university, moving them forward into that, because they're like sponges. Like they just
Mm-hmm.
do, and
Mm-hmm.
I really enjoyed, and that was sort of the majority of the age group that we worked with a lot of.
Do you think there's like a missing piece right now in high schools of
Yeah,
development in terms of strength
100%.
and conditioning? Yeah.
Yeah. My son did play high level football for a little while. And I remember at his high school, which is considered one of the top football schools, I guess, in Southern Ontario.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember reaching out to the coaches and I was like, hey, football is a dangerous sport and I'm fully supportive of my son playing. Like I'm pushing him to be like, yeah, like if you love it, I'll support you. And I know a lot of parents with football may not do that. But I was like, I don't understand why your guys are not in the gym training. Like, why is there
Mm-hmm.
no off season, training? I just didn't understand. And they didn't have anything. They're like, well, we have a gym,
Right.
right? Like, I don't like it was,
How did he respond or she respond to
uh,
your comment?
he just, I said, listen, I'm at a place we have trained. The owner trained a lot of NFL guys. Like he would go down to Florida, train them, come back. Because I also do manual therapy. I was lucky enough to work on quite a few NFL athletes, and I know like how much training, like how dangerous the sport is, and what they have to put their bodies through. It didn't make any sense to me why at the high school level that all the schools don't have their kids on a program. Mind blowing.
Yeah, I want to double click on that. So, for kids in general, I get a lot of questions, especially from parents, of like, where should I start my kids? What age should I start at? Will strength training stunt their growth? What's your whole kind of mindset on it and expertise there with kids?
Yeah. My son started training at the facility that I was at when he was 12 years old. Didn't stunt his growth.
Mm-hmm.
When he was in grade 9, so he would have been, I guess he was 14 at the time. I took him down to the University of Florida to
Mm-hmm.
train with one of the top strength and conditioning coaches in all of NCAA basketball, Preston Green, who I had interned with. And I took my son and I took a football player a kid that I was training, and the mom, and said, okay, we're going, like, this is top level training here. You're going to be in one of the best facilities in all of the United States. And we're going to expose you to, like, this is what training, this is where it can go. This is what you need to
Mm-hmm.
do, kind of thing. The two of them had a blast. I mean, they loved it,
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, your kids can start training young,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
Yeah, I think that experience just sounds like such an awesome, life changing experience at such a young age that I think more and more kids need to be exposed to,
Yes.
right? And it's just like, seeing and for in my client roster with parents who are just getting into the gym at like 40s, 50s, sometimes 60s. It's like, what took you so long? Like, it's like, have you been in, the blinders on your whole life, right? Like, it's just such, and I think more and more today, but with social media out there and as present as it is, I think strength training is now finally coming a little more to the forefront of like, it's got to be part of your lifestyle, not just aesthetics, but injury prevention to feel good in your 70s and your 80s and do the things you want to do. I think that is a really good positive from social media that like my 77-year-old dad is now seeing it and sending me videos. He didn't grow up with it other than the Arnold. Like it was either bodybuilding or nothing, right? And I think that's what you were getting at in the beginning. But now it's more mainstream, right? Which I think is awesome here. And I wanted to go back. You were talking about women reverse dieting. Women are coming to you, they're under eating. So I've seen this quite a bit too, working with some women where they're so under eating, their hormones are so off. And where would you start with that person? What does the conversation even look like of like, they come in and I'm like, Heather, I want to lose weight. I want fat loss. I want, that sexy social, influencer's physique, right? Where would you start there?
Yeah. Some of it will be, we have to look at the body that you have now and not the one that maybe you had when you were 20, because that's who you're comparing yourself to. Number one. Okay. Mm-hmm. The sexy person on Instagram has probably done shows. Maybe they don't have the same life, and if they were doing fitness competitions or figure competitions, there may or may not have been performance enhancing drugs involved in that. And that's not me dodging that sport, but it does happen. The self comparison thing is killer, number one. So we try to get away from that. And I like to always start protein first. I'm very protein focused first. And let's work on one thing at a time. And when you get that, then we're going to add another step rather than sometimes it can be very difficult to do a full overhaul with someone who's been under eating for 20 years. Mm-hmm. And I think what's happened is that marketing for women is like, oh, eat less, like just have a shake, only eat a salad, don't eat that much, And so that's what they think they're supposed to do.
And how are you undoing that mindset or those constant ads that we're getting every single day, especially for women, of like, you only need to eat a salad and a shake, right? And drink your calories type of thing. How do you unravel that a little bit?
I usually start with a breakfast. I know it sounds crazy, but when I get them eating breakfast, because most of them don't, what happens is they end up having more energy throughout the day. And as soon as you get that, it's like, okay, now we can get the ball rolling. And I do set up protein goals to work towards. And one thing we always say is progress over perfection. And I think as women, and I admit, being in the training world and stuff, it's this whole, like, there's a lot of perfectionism. Like, it has to be perfect. We got to get it perfect. It's got to be perfect. And, and that can create a lot of stress within itself. But if you look at, hey, guess what? Last week, maybe you didn't hit the protein goal, but you got an extra 10 to 15 grams a day in for 7 days. This is amazing. Like, let's celebrate these small wins. Like, you're progressively getting a little bit better and a little bit better, but you have to be able to show it to them.
And how do you show it in terms of what they're tracking? Or
yes, exactly. Yeah. In terms of what they're tracking, and then going back to like the feeling too, as well. It's like, remember, you've said to me that you're now having more energy in the morning and you're not wanting to reach for that cup of coffee first thing in the morning. Right. So it's little things that they start. There's a lot of, aha moments for them.
And I feel like protein has definitely been out there a lot, especially in fitness, nutrition, and a lot of different industries now. And I know everyone kind of has their own take, but what's, starting with a woman in her 40s, where would you start her on some protein targets or goals?
It's individualized. I can't really sort of give like a generalization because it really is individualized. Like someone like myself, I've been training for a long time. I pretty consistently train 4 times a week, and that's lifting weights. I'm not including walks or cardio or anything like that. So my protein intake would be anywhere from 140 to maybe 160 grams a day. And if I said that to someone, they'd be, there's no way. Like, they see that number, they're like, oh my God, I'm barely eating 60. Right. So it depends on the individual. So in my head, I may have the protein goal number for them, but really I just want to start progressing and seeing it get better.
And how is it based on weight? Is it based on specific goals that you're coming up with that specific number?
Yeah. I'm usually doing body composition, so based on like lean mass sort of thing.
Hmm.
Now,
Hmm.
if I'm not able to base it off of lean mass, I would do it more as we're going to look at a scale of between 35 to 45 grams per meal.
Per meal. Okay.
And I
Yeah.
prefer eating over drinking food.
Yeah, I'm exactly the same. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'd rather you eat your food. I think more importantly because you're going to be full, you're going to be
Yeah.
satiated, and
Yeah.
we all know we have a shake, and you're starving 30 minutes and up to an hour later.
Yeah.
Lastly, I'd like to touch on, and I'm sure you have experience in this, is women who have recently given birth and maybe want to jump right back into strength training or ramping right back up to their routine. How would you coach that new mom who's like anxious to get back into the gym? Maybe, she's obviously breastfeeding or maybe bottle feeding, her hormones maybe a little bit out of whack, her body's maybe still recovering. Where would you start? My wife is kind of there, she's now a year out, right? And
Yeah.
it's, I've seen it. I've seen it with women who have wanted to work with me, and I've worked with women who have just given birth a few months after they've been cleared by their doctors. But I think this is a big one because women, there's just so much pressure,
Yeah.
to perform, as a mom, as in your career, and then, get right back to your routine. So how would you maybe alleviate a little bit of that pressure to a new mom that wants to work on her health?
Yeah, that's a tough one because new moms, I mean, you would know because you're experiencing, I guess, being a new dad is they're exhausted.
Hmm.
They're
Hmm.
exhausted, and they don't really get any time for themselves, and that can be a tough place to be in. I have a son, so I've gone through that myself. Um, I really, when I get someone like that, once they've been given the green light, is like we go slow and one step at a time and
Hmm.
try to get some form of consistency. So there would have to be a lot of support from the partner of the woman who's just had birth, because it means that, hey, guess what? When she's at the gym, like you might have to step up and be
Hmm.
home with the baby
Hmm.
or the mother-in-law or the mother or the grandma or the nanny or something like that. There has to be, it's almost like it has to be scheduled in time.
Hmm.
And if you can't make that time, because especially when kids are little and if they start going to play groups and mommy and me classes and stuff, they get sick and then the parents get sick. As long
Hmm.
as I can see at least a twice a week consistency, and it could be a floating time, right, with them,
Hmm.
and get them going and lifting, starting to feel better, and then it just sort of goes forward from there. The one thing I would like to point out though is two things I think for all new moms it's really important, and it's something that I didn't know about at the time, and thankfully is it's coming out a lot more, is seeing a pelvic floor health specialist after having child, two child, three child, like it depends on how many kids that you have. I
Hmm.
think that's really, really important, and it's really relatively, we'll say, new in the last couple of years. And the other thing that is hormone testing,
Hmm. Hmm.
right? And that's something that's been so focused on, perimenopause and menopausal women, but why wouldn't it be for post pregnancy? Because your hormones are going to be pretty messed up
Hmm.
because your
Hmm.
sleep schedules are so far off, and you have been, if you are breastfeeding, I mean, you've been feeding a child,
Hmm.
and I would like to see that change. And maybe it is, it's not really sort of my world anymore. I'm not really, I don't have a lot of clients in that sort of space right now, but I would be great to see if that becomes a more of a regular routine, sort of a postnatal hormone testing, and let's get those moms to a really good like functional baseline.
Hmm. Yeah, I think there's a lot of potential there for new moms, and of course they need as much support as they can get. But I think also having like that, maybe a specific mom protocol to just getting back
Yeah.
to some kind of baseline, right? So having that hormone testing done, helping create a schedule or some kind of routine that works, and kind of get you back on your way and rebuild that foundation. And maybe just in closing, for those women who are having a hard time or maybe don't have the confidence to start in the gym, don't know where to start
Mhm.
either, how would you coach that person who's wanting to make a change but not sure where to start, or how to get going?
So it really depends on, are you able to hire a coach and work one on one? Because that's always going to be the best answer.
Mm-hmm.
Don't wait until you're in shape to hire the coach. You
I like
probably heard
that.
this
Yeah.
before.
Yeah.
Oh, I need to get in shape first. I need to do this first. It's like, no, you don't. You just hire the coach. Like, that's all you need to do. Hire the coach. They're on the journey with you. You guys are a team. Like, just get going. If it's not possible for someone, because it's an investment, it's not an expense, it's an investment. It's an investment into yourself and into your health. But it's not always possible for everyone. I would suggest, you know what, find some sort of group class to go to where there is a community and it is based on lifting weights. So, there's lots of stuff out there right now, and that's it's exploding. Like, it's really exploding right now. So I think there's a lot of options for people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I love how you mentioned the community. I think that's a huge one, right? Especially coming out of pandemic days where we were so isolated, and that's something I'm a huge advocate of in my online space, is building that community. You don't have to be local to where I am, and it's whether you're halfway across the world or out on the West Coast. We can still cultivate and create that community, whether it's in person or it is online. So Heather, awesome conversation today. I feel like we could continue to keep chatting.
Yes.
Where
Yes.
can people find you? What's the best place to reach you and get a hold of you?
Yeah, so I'm on Instagram. That's pretty much my main source. So it's flexible underscore bodies inc on
Mm-hmm.
Instagram. I do free consults with people if you're just wanting information. It's just info@flexiblebodiestraining.com. And that's pretty much the best way.
Awesome. That's great, Heather. Well, thanks so much for joining me today, and look forward to speaking to you soon.
Okay. Thank you so much for having me. Appreciate it.